Hi everyone, this is Adam from Recreation Services, and today we're going to be talking about low back pain, which is a plague for many of us. The problem with low back pain is there's many potential causes of low back pain. It can be any one or combination of causes. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of those causes and then go through some exercises to help hopefully alleviate and prevent back pain in the future. So many of the causes come from either tightness or weakness. So it's a combination or an imbalance between mobility and stability. Both of them play a big cause because mobility allows you to move more while stability protects your structures. So it allows you to move safely without jeopardizing safe postures or anything like that. So some of the main causes you might see, sometimes it's something like tight hamstrings. The hamstrings in the back of the leg here attach at the pelvis. So if they are too tight, they can cause a rotation in the pelvis here, which then puts a strain on the low back muscles that also attach there. So it's kind of pulling their insertion point further away and putting more tension in your back muscles. So sometimes you might need a little more hamstring stretching. Weak glutes is another issue. Your glutes are very important for supporting the back and supporting your pelvis while you're sitting, walking, standing, things like that. It's very important for posture, pelvis alignment. So that can be another potential issue. Weak core muscles is another thing. So we mentioned stability and stabilizing structures. Your core is very important for stabilizing the spine while you're bending, twisting, and that kind of stuff. So obviously a big risk there if your core is not strong enough to maintain posture, especially while lifting things or bending out of position and stuff like that. Probably the biggest cause of back pain, potentially along with core, is tight and or weak hips. Your hip flexors attach at the spine, at the anterior part of your lumbar spine, so if they're tight, it's pulling on your spine and pulling your lumbar spine forward, again putting more tension on the back there. Also, tightness in general, especially in the hips. The more your hips can move, the less your back has to move. So if you have enough mobility in your hips, it means you don't have to rely on your back as much. On the other hand, if your hips are very tight, or hamstrings or anything are very tight, you get less range of motion out of your hips before your back has to do more, or your pelvis starts to rotate or things like that. So it's kind of this balance between mobility and stability, and an imbalance there puts you at risk for low back pain or injury or anything like that. I like to think of it like a flexible muscle or a loose muscle has more give before anything bad happens as well, right? So if you have a muscle that's very tight, you might only get here before a strain or a pull or whatever, where if you're a little more flexible, maybe you get a little further before anything bad happens. So in a slip and fall type thing, you get a little more range before anything bad happens, that kind of stuff. So, so mobility and stability based around the hips, hips, glutes, hamstrings, back, all that. It's kind of a mobility and stability of all the surrounding structures basically can have an influence on low back pain. So we're going to go through some exercises that can help improve your mobility and a little bit for stability as well. So we're going to start on the floor here, working on the hips. Get down on your back here. So we're gonna do everything for about 10 reps here. Any of the holds we'll do 20 to 30 seconds. So we're gonna grab onto a knee, you're gonna pull forward to your chest here, back down, we'll do about 10. Also play around, kind of scour around a little bit, maybe go to the outside. And once you get to the top, kind of go around in a circle here. Nice and far here. Again, work the outsides. I'll do one more. We'll switch sides. Good, other side. Start that outside. So again, we'll do 10, but if there's ever anything you feel is extra good, you might want to throw in a few reps, and that's fine. Everyone's going to be a little different, so you might find that some exercises are easier or harder than others. If anything feels a little tougher or a little tighter, that's probably something you need to focus on. So it's a nice way to kind of pick which ones are best for you. So next we're going to do a kneeling hip stretch or lunge stretch. So we're going to get up into 90 degrees here at the front and back knee. Sitting upright for a hip stretch, your range of motion shouldn't be that big if your posture is good. So if you're sitting tall, you don't want to be leaning forward, otherwise that takes away the hip stretch from the hip. Same with arching your back too much. Like I mentioned, your hip flexors attach at your spine, so extending that spine shortens that distance as well and takes some of the stretch off. So sometimes people will cheat like that to get extra range of motion, make you feel like you're doing more when you're really not. So stay nice and tall, try and flatten that lower back, and then really just focus on pushing that hip forward. So you should feel it here a little down the quad, but not too far. Stay nice and tall, push out at the hip. So these ones, 20 to 30 seconds per side. I like to aim for basically a full minute of a stretch. So whether it's 3 sets of 20 seconds or 2 sets of 30 seconds, something like that. As long as they get a full minute in a stretch is kind of what I shoot for. Okay, we'll switch sides. Woo, just lost my balance there. Okay, so low back out, nice and tall, and then push that hip forward, and then you can kind of lean forward a little bit. But like I said, you shouldn't have to go too far. Nice and tall, push that hip out. Okay, so next one we're going to do is a bridge. We're going to do the bridge a little differently. So the back is several vertebrae that can move individually. A lot of times we get seized up and it moves as like kind of a block, especially if you have back pain. But we're going to try and segment it as much as we can. So you're going to lie on your back, feet flat on the floor. So it's going to be a standard hip bridge. So we're going to end position up here, but instead of just pushing the hips up, you're going to think about rolling the back at the same time. So you're going to think about having a string, tail, or something where you're pulling here. So you're going to rotate the pelvis first, and then you're going to roll up onto the shoulders, and then reverse on the way down. So upper back, mid back, lower back. So you're going to roll up, other direction on the way down. You might find if you're really tight that you can't segment that much. Maybe you're more of a block than other people, or maybe you're extra mobile through your back. Everyone's going to be a little different. You just do the best you can. Okay, let's do 1 or 2 more here. So you'll probably feel it most at the very end here, and then at the start again when you're really rotating the pelvis there. Good, so we do about 10 of those. We're going to stay on the floor here and do lumbar rocks. So this one's more about rotation instead of flexion extension. So we're going to lay down on your back here. Similar to the first stretch where you had your knee up, except now you're going to take that knee and cross the body and put it down. The big thing here is to make sure this hand, shoulder, stays relatively flat to the floor. So you don't want to be rolling all the way over. So try and stay flat here. You can use your other hand to push your knee down a little bit as long as you can stay on the floor. And hold there. Maybe after 10 seconds or so, you try and go a little further. You might feel some little cracks and pops in here. That's okay. Okay, switch sides here. Yep. Cross. Again, try and keep your shoulders flat to the floor as best you can here. If that limits your range of motion, that's okay. You just go as far as you can, keeping your shoulders on the ground. Okay. Stay on the mat here. Now we're going to do cats and camels, so similar to the hip bridge where we're trying to segment the motion a little bit, but this time we're really just emphasizing the lower back. So, but we're still going to focus on kind of that pelvic tilt. So you're going to be hands and knees here. You're going to arch the low back and then flatten the low back, push it straight up. You're going to do about 10 of those. If while you're doing this you find a lot of tightness in the upper back, you can always think about sitting down here and doing it from here. You can start feeling the upper back a little more. For me, it's mostly lower back, so I stick out here somewhere. I'll do a couple more. Good. Okay, so like I mentioned before, the hip moves in all directions. We've only really done forwards and backwards here, so we're going to do something for the adductors as well here. So we're going to put one foot out to the side, toe out, and now from here, you're kind of in a lateral lunge almost kind of position, but kneeling, and then you're going to bend forward at the hips, and then back up. Just make sure you stay nice and tall, chest out. A couple more. Good, so this one you get to stretch your adductors, but you also get to move at the hips a little bit and move the back a little bit. Need a little more room there. There we go. A few more. 2 more. Good. So last few have been mostly mobility based. We're going to do a stability exercise now. So we're going to do some dead bugs but emphasizing the low back as much as we can. So you're going to lie down on your back here. Thighs vertical, knees around 90 degrees. From here, you're going to reach down with one foot, touch your heel to the floor, back up to the start, and then alternate feet. So do about 10 per leg here. The key though is to keep your lower back flat. So you really want to be focused on pushing your low back into the floor. If you want, you can put your hand under your low back and really make sure you feel pressure on your hand. That way you know you're keeping that low back pushed into the floor. If this is too easy, you can start reaching out a little bit. So you start extending that knee, reach out a little, but still you've got to check on that low back and make sure you're maintaining position. If you do start to feel pain or you're unable to maintain your lower back in contact with the mat, then we'll need to come back into this kind of bent knee position or somewhere in between. You just got to find your happy medium that's hard enough, but something that you can do without pain or losing contact with the floor. The last one we're going to do is a back roll. So again, it's another segmented movement where we're just going to start moving at the hips, moving at the back, now that we're a little warmed up here. So segmented rotation, kind of like the hip lift. We're going to start on the way down, rolling at the upper back, work our way down to the lower back, get down to the bottom. On the way up, now we're emphasizing the lower back, up to the top, again, upper back on the way down, start lower back on the way up. Like I mentioned, everyone's a little different, so you might find certain parts of your back move as one unit, while other parts can get a little more segmented, that's fine. Just visualize as best you can all these little joints along the way, bending as you flex and extend. Let's do one more. Good. So that covers most of the movements that you're going to go through. Help loosen up that back, loosen up the hips, strengthen your core a little bit. Some things that you could do more of if you need add more glute exercises or stretches or something like that. But yeah, hopefully that helps alleviate or prevent any low back pain. Like I mentioned before, you might find some, a little harder or a little more intense than others. Probably helps identify what your weakness is regarding low back pain and something you need to focus on, maybe add more of into your program. Good luck, and we'll